the second one I wanted to talk about is beware the myth, which sounds so daunting. And sounds very like the word beware. It's usually, it makes me think of a haunted story or something. It was episode 317, beware the myth, and it's about learning styles. And learning styles, I think we kind of get into this fear here, and people really took to this idea. So if we're not sure on it, just to clarify, learning styles is this idea that every individual has a very unique way of learning. And the way to help with engagement and retention is to individualize that and just speak directly to that style. So for example, we say learning styles. The biggest ones that are talked about are like a visual learner, auditory learner, and kinesthetic learner. So people that can really learn best when they're only engaging these senses. So the reason why this is kind of a big thing right now is because this was so popular, especially in adult learning. Huge. That like, okay, you know, we can reach our students, we can help with that retention if we focus only on their style. The issue is that the practice itself isn't clear. What does that mean when you have a classroom of 20 students? That's a possibility of multiple different learning styles at once. How do you individualize that? How do you teach someone visually, this group visually, this group auditorily, this group kinesthetically? And that also has to do with the topic too. Some topics, it can be a little challenging in only engaging some of those senses. So what I particularly really like about this episode, it breaks down trying to find out where these myths came from, because there really isn't a theory about learning styles. I think the closest one is Gardner's theories of multiple intelligences. Right. It's Gardner, right?
It's a misinterpretation of
Thank you. Yes. Which the theory of multiple intelligences is kind of valid in the sense that it just means that their people's intelligences are varied. They don't all look the same way, which makes a lot of sense. If you think about people in your life, not everyone shows certain intelligences in just one specific way. And I think generally, if I think about that kind of intelligence in one way, I think of like someone knowing all the answers, or someone being like a talking encyclopedia, which is such a narrow form of intelligence. And kind of, you know, it kind of is always put present, like that's the nerd, is the person that just knows all this stuff and can regurgitate it really quickly. But yeah, so the reason why I like this episode is that not only does it dispel that myth, that there really is no evidence, because this has been tested, research tested, and there's never been any evidence that teaching directly to someone's style means that they retain information better or that they learn better. It's meaningless. But what I like how they focus is that they focus really primarily on the negative effects of learning styles, and not just to point out that teachers are incorrect or wrong or stupid or something, but that when we use this narrow term, what that does is it also unwillingly, the students themselves put themselves in a box, and that I can only learn this way. And that's like their focus and how that actually negatively affects students. And they're talking about younger people, but anecdotally, I've seen this too. I've had students tell me, I can't learn this way. I have to learn this way. I'm a hands-on learner. I can only learn hands-on, which is when a student told me that, it was during the pandemic shutdown. We were learning online. Which is like, but we're going. so it's like, well, we're doing math, and I'm having you guys do it on paper. Like, I'll show you a problem where you're doing it on paper, and then we're talking about it, and you're showing me your work. I don't understand how that's not hands-on. But she couldn't give me that answer because the term itself was vague. Well, all it did was just, it somehow, in some way, it got in her head that she could only learn this way. And that was part of a process that hindered her in the moment. I've also had this interesting, when I first learned that about learning styles, this was before this podcast episode, I had this incident when I was talking to a teacher who had many years experience. And of course, again, anecdote. The teacher was actually upset that I said that learning styles was not real or was not true because I questioned their belief. And in turn, they turned defensive, which is, it is an effect, is like presented with evidence. There are people that tend to cling onto their belief more than change it due to changing evidence or new information. And I probably, in the sense, like, probably didn't handle it well. But it was like, just circular argument. But the reality is, this person is an adult educator, is a great adult educator, seeing them do amazing things in the classroom, but they're just stuck on this term, this phrase, this idea, because they have these students, and some of these students have gone through hell, had some really strong barriers in their lives and had gone through really terrible things. And what really stuck out is that they can be intelligent in specific ways that aren't always demonstrated, especially in the K-12 system. So, like, in that sense, right, it's like I was telling that teacher, I didn't directly say you are wrong or you are incorrect or you are stupid. But what I did was I kind of put them on the defensive, because that idea that there's multiple intelligences and we can help our students feel that, oh, we can learn a different way because your brain is wired differently than these other people. There's a beauty in that, that we can foster their different intelligence through a learning style. But like, this isn't quite the case. And I don't think it would have mattered if I brought this podcast episode or something, because this is something that was very true to this person, this teacher, who, as I mentioned, is a great teacher. So
can I jump in and speak to that experience just a little bit, Nadia? One of the things that I've gotten from using podcasts as a learning tool, I did my original teacher training, let's just say a few years ago. I don't want to say how many. All right.
Sure.
And the thing is, at the time that I did my teacher training, I was trained on the theories and methods that were, the most recent advanced research at that moment. But times change. And since we don't necessarily go back into the university classroom throughout our career as learners, as students, one of the things I find from the podcast is it is this incredible way to encounter and learn more about the advances in research and education, and just get that introduction really, really quickly and start thinking about these newer ideas and get exposed to them. And then I can pursue those newer ideas on further research myself and learn about what advances have happened in the field. So that's one of the things that I hope our listeners can take away, is how you can use podcasts as a professional learning tool for yourself, or a structure for yourself.
Really well put. Absolutely. Be in charge of your own learning, guys. Like, learn what you want to learn. We're not going to tell you how you should learn, but absolutely. So I only have two as of right now. Those are the ones that are most present in my mind for the T for Teaching episodes: 307, Career Readiness, and 317, Beware the Myth. But there are a lot of really fascinating topics on there. And I know you had an episode that you wanted to talk about with T for Teaching.
What I picked up from T for Teaching was they have a very strong focus on working with accessibility and students with disabilities, integrating instruction for students with disabilities into your classroom. So you can find some resources there in that regard. And then they are also very heavily focused on AI. And so if you have thoughts or questions about AI in your classroom, they have several episodes. And I just listened to one of the more recent ones, which was 319. And in that episode, let me check the title on that very quickly.
It's AI in the curriculum.
Perfect. Thank you. AI in the curriculum. So in that one, the guest is actually an instructor from the MBA program, but he talks about designing an AI-based course. And he raises so many questions and thoughts about how AI is going to be integrated into education and into our daily lives in the future, and how to kind of, take a forward perspective on that. Because I know that for me, myself, AI is not one of my strongest areas. And so if you are interested in that topic, I would definitely explore this podcast, because as I said, they feature several episodes on AI and lots to learn from them in that area.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really looking forward. I bookmarked a few of those too. That's like my next kind of forte, because it's just such the in thing right now is AI in the classroom. And some people are, bugging out, how are we going to use this? Our students are going to cheat. Oh no, our AI is going to teach for us. I was like, yeah.
No. Or we're training our robot overlords. Like, I have fears of that, okay?
So, I don't know if this eases anyone's mind, but I actually, one of the courses I created for Propel, I actually used Chat GPT to generate a lesson for me. And the reason why I did that was, one, I haven't been in the classroom in a long time now, so I needed something fresh. And two, the assignment is to revise the lesson. So I was like, let's revise this lesson. And Rebecca, I showed you the lesson. I was like, hey, tell me what you think of this. And you're like, well, first of all, it's not bad, but there's also there's like 4 learning objectives, but it only covers 2 of them. But for some reason, it says 4 of them at the beginning. And I was like, that's the point. Why does it do that? Like, it's like, here are these things I want. Chat GPT was like, here are the 4 things I want to talk about, but I'm going to think about the other 2 later. Let me go on these first 2. Yeah, so we have a little time. We don't have to worry.
All right. We're not going to be replaced next week.
No, maybe like 2 years. We're fine for that. We'll find new jobs in 2 years, I'm sure. So anyway, yeah. So our last podcast that we wanted to talk about is Bright Morning. Do you want to start?
Yeah, I'll take that on. And this is a completely different picture of humanity. Okay. As Nadia kind of mentioned, she originally introduced me to this author, Elena Aguilar, and she has a lot to say that I think is very valuable to our field. And so I would definitely recommend for you to check out her podcast and possibly even her books. She has several. And with this podcast, there's a couple I'm going to mention to you. And then, Nadia, if you want to jump in on any that you have some thoughts about too.
I will jump in and have opinions, yes.
Great. So the first one is actually pretty early in her series. And I want to say, I think the series came out started in 2020. So there's some things about it that you will get that sense that this was happening in 2020. There's a lot of pandemic references. But this episode is episode 7, and it's called Unfettered Access to My Humanity. And in this episode, this is less a coaching episode and more an interview episode. And in this episode, she interviews an author, and it's talking entirely about race and equity in the classroom. I thought the conversation was incredibly powerful, and I would strongly recommend that if this is a topic of interest to you, that you take a listen to it, because I think it is really, really well done and offered us a lot to learn from on a topic that really affects all of our lives. As I said, I feel that she addresses race and equity in a very thorough and thoughtful way. So I would encourage you to kind of listen to that. Moving on from there, she also talks about, like I said, primarily she's an instructional coach. And so 2 episodes that she has, if you want to hear that idea about being a coach and how it works in practice in a coaching conversation, it's episode 28 and 29. And what she does in that one is, in episode 28, she is coaching, I believe she's a school principal or assistant principal. And so she's talking with this person through their challenges in their job and through the areas they want to focus on for improvement within their job. And she's using these coaching tools to move the conversation forward. So she's talking with the person, for example, about their values and how their values inform their work. That values conversation alone is something that I think is very useful for all of us to contemplate as instructors or other professionals working in adult education. What are your personal values and how do you carry out your personal values through the work that you are doing? And taking the moment to identify those personal values, I think it can solidify for you some things that you want to do in the classroom and some ways that, actions that you want to carry out in the classroom, ways you want to behave in the classroom, or ways that you want to behave as a program leader, for example. So, like I said, with 28, she is talking with her coachee. And then in 29, which is quite a bit shorter, she analyzes the tools that she used and she points them out to you and talks them through. So, Nadia, did you want to jump in here?
Oh yeah, I was just really listening and just like reflecting because I listened to all 3 of those episodes. Unfettered access to my humanity reminded me so much of just so my background is, my graduate program was cinema media studies, so that was more on the academic side, but the 3 big themes of those years were race, class, and gender. So I got so much of that, and that kind of put me in that place of reading and listening to people and these just really powerful, feelings that come across and thoughts and experiences that is so hard to imagine if you are not in that place. It was just, I thought it was a really incredible interview. The coaching ones, now that was really interesting technique. So what I really liked about how Elena conducted the coaching session is she's recording this coaching session, but then periodically would stop and so I'm thinking about it as an editing sense, which would be like she stops the interview, like it goes on pause, and then like in the future Elena's talking about why she'd said this in a certain way or what she was getting out of it. And I thought it was such a good insight into coaching, or like an aspect of coaching. It's just, why are we using these tools? What do I want to get out of the coachee? What am I hoping that she realizes about herself? And that was so fascinating for like technical wise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then in 29, episode 29, she really hammers that down of just like, what are these tools? What is the design of them? What are they for? And I think that anyone that's really interested in coaching, like Rebecca, you mentioned that we do have a coaching team at Propel. If anyone's really interested, we have our course to learn more about coaching just from a different perspective and different techniques than the motivational coaching that we do. It's very interesting. And just, especially, and also listening on a session too, because you don't usually get that access. So that was for that person to put that out there was so incredible.
It's so vulnerable and almost intimate in a way where it's kind of just like they're having this actual real conversation, And I will also mention to you, I mean, this is my takeaway as an instructor. There are a lot of things in the tools that she shares as a coach that I think are valuable for personal exploration as an instructor. Like, we may not all have access to instructional coaching as, adult education teachers, but we can consider these tools and what would it be like if someone was talking through these questions with us. And so that's another thing that you can get from these episodes, even if you're not in a supervisor role.
Absolutely. I felt like what you mentioned, the values conversation was really particularly impactful, especially since we do a lot of self-reflection in our roles, and we've been thinking about values a lot. What values do we bring to adult education? Or that we may not always talk about. You and I definitely one-on-one, we talk about values a lot because we're very values-driven people. And having that opportunity, I think having the opportunity to talk about values and listen to other people's values is so powerful, because that's also another way of bonding as colleagues. not necessarily super intimate, but knowing that there are other people in your network, in your field, that have these values that drive them and they're similar. I feel like that makes me feel so connected to people in certain aspects. I don't know how you feel about that, but that's like what I got out of it.
Right. Well, and I will tell you, here's the spoiler alert. The exercise on values is define your own personal values as a list of 3. And it's challenging. I attempted it, and it's pretty hard to narrow down who you are as a person into 3 values. So I give you that exercise as one to try out. That's one of Elena's exercises. And I think that when we post this, we can hopefully post a resource list about, how people can find all the things that we're mentioning here.
Oh, we definitely are. So yeah, we're going to list the tools. We're going to link to the websites that host the podcast, but also if the hosts are doing other things, because they're doing some really cool things. So it's just great to share. Of course. There's another episode that you wanted to talk about.
I'm gonna have a quick mention of one more episode from Bright Morning. That's episode 80. And the reason that I'm mentioning that one, it's called Remember, Reclaim, and Restore. And it features New Mexico. It is an interview with, I believe her name is Teresa Moquino, and she directs the Carey's Children's Learning Center in Cochise Pueblo. And so I would recommend that one just to, it's hometown for us. Her name is Trisha Moquino. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that I listened to that one too. That was very powerful. And how language really is culture, and bringing that back, bringing a language that was almost dead and trying to, restore it. That's the kind of sense, and restore that culture. That was particularly powerful.
It's not adult education, but it is definitely New Mexico.
Right, we're tangibly themed, and New Mexico generally likes New Mexico, so we like these things. It was very fascinating and interesting, just from a learning about language perspective. Even though it wasn't adult ed, but just thinking about. I mean, you're a language person, so you know all this stuff generally. Yeah. I'm not, but just thinking about language and connections, I thought that was really amazing. It was just so nice to just sit back and listen to these words, especially this person who's trying so hard to work on bringing this language back and connecting culture among people. It's amazing. So, wow. We got these 3 podcasts. If anyone has more to share or would like to talk about your experience listening to some of these episodes, or there are other episodes you want to highlight, please reach out to the Teachers Listserv. Podcast is just such an interesting form of engagement. At Propel, we're trying so hard to just do so many different forms of engagement. So I feel incredibly lucky to be able to do this as a way to reach, especially New Mexican adult educators, because we're just such a small field, small niche field, but we are doing, and we're listening, and just really incredible stuff. And I do hope that people can point us in certain directions too, on if there's something even cooler out there that Rebecca and I haven't found yet.
Yeah, we want to know.
we need something to listen to on our commutes.
Wait, what?
What commute?
we work remotely, Nadia.
Okay, when I'm driving to my coffee shop because I want to work and drink expensive coffee at the same time, I need something to listen to. But
okay.
Rebecca, thank you so much for your time. This was so exciting.
Nadia, thank you so much for having this conversation with me, because you know that I've listened to these and gotten excited about them. And so I appreciate the opportunity to share this.
Yeah, just to say, like, anytime someone has some nerdy thing they want to share that is related to adult education in some way, please reach out. I would love to talk to more people about professional learning, about adult education, anything, because this is what we're here for. and this is why they pay me. Not all of it, but you know, a little portion of it, a little bit. Thank you, and thank you again, Rebecca.
Thanks, Nadia.